Hi everyone. We welcome you to the second session conducted by the web dev team here at Hackspace. So in mind, but you really don't know how to produce it or how to bring it to life. So in such situations, creating a website or an application might be the right way to go, because oftentimes you might have knowledge in maybe Python or maybe C, but those technologies alone can't really actually give you a proper user experience. It won't really encourage people to actually use what you've created and be comfortable using it. So let's take an example of a project idea. So maybe if you actually want to help people who are registering for the bus routes in PES, you might think, okay, I people start inputting their information, and the users at the end users also start getting a certain output, and then there's proper pre-communication. So that's the thing. So in such situations, actually creating a website and application is the best thing you can go for. Now, since you have actually answered the question of why you would want to create a website, let's ask another question. Why would you actually want to add styling and functionality? Apart from the obvious that, yeah, of course, a website is meant to be stylish, it's actually meant to be pleasing to the eye, and it should also provide functionality to give users certain inputs and outputs. But why go the extra mile? So let's take an example. Maybe you actually want to buy a certain product online. Let's say a watch, for example, and you actually go through many websites searching for reviews. So you go through like dozens of websites, you go through each of them, you read through them, and then you start and you actually encounter a website which takes some time to load, but it's okay. You still remain. You're on the website. But once the website loads, you see the review. You see that the text is just directly put into the web page. There isn't really much padding. There isn't any font changes. Um, all the images are misplaced. Some images are oversized. The colors and placements are just not right. So when you look at that, you're like, oh, these guys haven't really put much effort into their website. Should I really, or how am I sure that these guys have put much effort into the review as well? So that becomes your first impression. Your first impression on the whole review, on the content of the application itself is negative. But on the contrary, if you were to actually go to another website which has a review and everything else is like pretty polished, so you have a proper logo, you have proper coloring, proper spacing, proper font sizes, you have social media contacts below. Like okay, like these guys look proper. They look like they're actually serious, and I can even trust the review. So that's one important thing. So that's what I was saying. So one important point is that no one actually trusts an ugly website. So this doesn't really come on top of your head when you think about it, but this is something that's actually very important. You want your end users to actually trust you in what you're doing. Let's take another example. So we at Hackerspace itself, if we were to actually send you a link and tell you, okay, enter your email address and phone number because we want to start giving you some information on some of our events and stuff. And if it's pretty shady and it just has one simple input field which is completely out of place and misplaced, you're like, should I really give them my information? Is it really worth it? 'Cause I don't think it's a good idea. So that's just how it is. So I hope you guys are getting my point. So till now, we actually figured out why you want to create an application and why you actually want to style it and give it functionality and why you want to do it in a very proper and systematic manner. So one of the technologies that we actually use to go about doing this is CSS. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It is actually used to give your HTML elements certain styles when it's displayed on the screen. So it's used for styling your web pages. It provides designs, layouts, and also another important thing is that it provides variations to your styles based on different screen sizes. So if you were to actually look at our own Hackerspace website, it has a different view when you look at it from a laptop compared to when you look at it on mobile. So the font sizes are different, the image or the text placements are different. That's very important. So that this is actually called as responsive. We call such websites that are able to adapt from both the desktop view to a mobile view as responsive websites. So now we've actually started to we just look into the syntax of CSS. So as you can see, this is a general CSS rule. You have a selector, and then you open the curly brace, and you end it with a closed curly brace. And inside you have properties and values. So you might have different properties. We'll get to that. I think that later on. But for here, an example of property is color. So you can choose any color. So you might have blue, red, black, and that's the value. So you give a property colon value, and then you put a semicolon for another property. So this keeps on continuing. So you can have multiple properties within the curly braces, and all of them are linked to a selector. So this is basically how you declare CSS rules. Now, how do you select HTML elements? So there are three ways to do this. As you've seen in the previous example, we can directly use the HTML tag, we can use a class name, and we can also use an ID. Now, the issue with using an HTML tag is that if you were to say use the p tag, so the paragraph tag, and give color as blue, the issue now would be is that in your entire website, wherever you had the p tag or whatever text you had within the p tag, everything would just directly turn blue. And in that situation, you actually lose control over what you want to do. Now, this depends upon you exactly. So if you really want this behavior in a website, and you maybe have a proper color scheme, okay, the background is supposed to be black, the text is supposed to be white, then it makes sense. But often you actually want more control over what turns or what behaves in what manner. So in those situations, we actually use classes and IDs. So to actually make a CSS rule for a class, we first have to start with a dot followed by the class name. And for an ID, we have to use a hash followed by the ID name. So now, what's the difference between a class and an ID? An ID is unique and can be applied to at most one element, whereas a class can be applied to any number of elements. So if I go to the previous example, we can let's say the class has homepage. So I might have different texts or different I'll have different texts. No, I'll have different paragraph tags. I'll have different maybe H1 tags as well. And if they're all on the home page, I want all of them to have the similar styling, the similar font, similar color. So all I have to do is give all of them the class name homepage. But if there's something that is very specific and there's only one of them in your whole website or your whole project, let's say a profile picture, you might not be actually having multiple pictures and multiple pages, but you might just have one element, one profile picture itself. So in that situation, using ID is more appropriate. So yeah, now there are three ways to insert CSS in onto your HTML pages. So the first method is called inline CSS. This is where you actually directly write the properties and the values in a style attribute within the tag. So the CSS stylings are then applied to everything that is within the opening and the closing of those tags. Now the second method is called internal CSS. Here you actually declare all your CSS rules within the opening and closing of a style tag. Now we normally place the style tag within the head of your HTML page, and then you can directly communicate with any of the elements which are present in your body. The third way and the professional way of actually doing things is the external CSS method. So what we do here is that we actually declare all our CSS rules in a separate file itself called style.css or anything ending with .css, and then we link that file to the specific HTML page that we actually want the styles to be rendered. So once we actually create the file, the way to link it is that we use the link tag. So we do link REL. REL stands for relation. So it's a relation, right? It's a style sheet. HRF is the path of the specific file. So why is this considered the best and the most professional way of doing things? So it has certain advantages. One thing is that you're actually dividing you're dividing different types of code. You're dividing, okay, HTML code is in one file and CSS code is in another file. And it also allows you to perform code reusability. So imagine if you had one CSS file and you had multiple HTML files, but there are certain components of CSS that you want to implement on different files. And instead of simply redeclaring those styles in every single page, you could just connect all of these HTML pages to one CSS file itself. Now let's go to cascading order. So imagine if you were actually in a situation where you have declared multiple styles. So you're given inline, you're given internal, you're given external, and maybe you've imported some other library as well, so Bootstrap or something. How do you figure out what style gets rendered on your screen? So this is given by the cascading order. So its priority is given by first is the inline, second is external and internal, and third is the browser. So if I were to go to the inline example, so as you can see here, this is the first priority. So whatever I've actually written inside these style attributes will always be rendered, no matter if I've actually tried to give something else. So I can put a class also, okay, class header, and I'll give that class a specific type of styling inside using the internal or the external method. That won't matter because it will be overwritten by the inline method. And the external and the internal have the same priority, so it doesn't really matter. But it's always preferred that you go for the external method while actually creating projects. Now, what is browser default? So if you think about it, imagine you have a simple HTML page and you have an input tag. So you're allowing users to you click on it and you can allow users to start inputting onto it. So if you were to click on it, you might actually get a small highlight or it might just pop up. So in Chrome, if you just look at it, if you were to click on a simple input, it sometimes gets a blue background or it just pops up. Now that is a styling that's been provided by the browser. So whatever we have described, the specific styling, it popping up or some shade coming or some highlight coming, that is actually browser specific and browser dependent. So that might be different for Chrome, it might be different for Firefox, and it might be different for Safari. So that actually has the least priority and can easily be overridden by any styles that the programmer implements. Now, before actually going into some important concepts in CSS, I would like to actually show you an example where you can actually figure out what's the importance of CSS. When you look at a proper website. So if you look at this website, it looks pretty professional. It looks like the team has put a lot of effort into making it. It has nice transition, nice I would say fonts and proper general styling and everything. Now, what will happen if we would try to remove the CSS from this? So what I can do is I just need to search for a style sheet, and once I find the CSS file, if I were to delete it, this is what happens. As you can see, this was all that was there on the HTML page. So I think this would actually give you more of an idea of what CSS can actually do and how powerful it is. It can convert something that's just random images and text into something that's actually very beautiful and something that's mesmerizing to an extent. And if we reload, we can again go back to the effects that we created from CSS. Now continuing with the presentation. So I'd first like to start with one of the most important, the beginning of some important concepts. So this is called the box model. So what is it? It's basically a box that wraps around every HTML element that you write CSS for. So this box actually allows you to it actually allows you to manipulate the values for margin, border, padding, height, and width. And if you were to look at the image, so the left and the top, right, bottom, they're all actually the most extreme edges of the web browser. And if you were to actually create or put an image there, they will just directly stick to those extreme edges. So if you want to actually like perform proper placements and keep them systematically arranged, you would have to start manipulating the values for padding, margin, border, etc. And I'll show you how to do that in some time. The second most important thing that I personally feel in CSS is Flexbox, and I personally use this concept a lot. And if you actually look close enough, we have used this a lot in our Hackspace website. So what Flexbox is that it's actually a one-dimensional layout system for actually systematically laying out different elements within the parent container. And one of the most important properties of Flexbox is the justify content property. So if you look at the images that are kept on the side, those are the different values for the justify content property. So flex start, you puts all the images to the beginning of the parent container. Flex end puts all the elements, you could say, at the end of the container. Center brings to the center. Now space between, space around, and space evenly are very similar. But what a difference is that in space between, if you look closely, there are only spaces between the elements, but not at the edges. But in space around, there is space between the elements and also a little space at the edges. And in space evenly everywhere. So in the beginning, at the end, and in between, all of them have equal spacing. And so the thing about CSS is that I've actually told you about some concepts, and there are actually a lot more, and there are a lot more concepts and it's best that you actually explore into it. And till now, I actually haven't told you about many properties and their values. So the thing in CSS is that it's actually impractical, or it's not possible, I would say, to actually learn all the properties and all their values and everything. So what I have actually provided to you is a cheat sheet. So if I were to go onto it right now, one second. Yeah. So I've given a link to a cheat sheet where you can actually figure out what properties you want to actually search for. So if I were to go example for, okay, the box model. So you click on the box model and you come. Okay, so border top. Now border top is actually the property, and border top width is actually the this thing the value you can give. So border top color, give red. Now this can actually help you to find the property that you're searching for, because often you might not even know what you're searching for. Like you might have an idea. Okay, I want this to happen, but what is it called? You might not know about it. So at least if you look at this, you find okay, this is the property. You can search it on Google and figure out okay how people are doing it, how to actually manipulate it in such a way that it actually fits to my requirements. And another important thing is that different properties are different types of values. So a color might have a text, so you'll have red, black, blue, green, etc. Or height or size will have in pixels, so you'll have 10 pixel height, 20 pixel height. And if it's a background image, you'll actually have a URL. So properties are very different, and I don't think they've actually properly specified the values for certain properties here. So the best thing for you to do would be to actually search these properties online. And as you keep on going forward with it, you'll actually figure out, okay, this is what this property does. Okay, this is what this thing does. And yeah, so now, yeah, cool. Look, um, okay, how to get an ID of a certain tag. So you actually have to set the ID. And how do you set an ID is that you actually have to give an ID attribute, and I'll be showing that in the hands-on session. Okay, what is the meaning of justify content? So what justify content does is that um, if you see here, it's basically think about it. So this is the parent. So you're writing all the stylings for the parent container right now, and its content is what is inside the parent container. So I might be having multiple elements. Justify its content means position it to an extent. It just basically means position it. How do you want to position it? And then you do the value. Okay, justify content. This thing flex, start, or center, or space between. So it's just a simple property. Okay, I think that's all the questions for now. Yeah, so I'll just continue with the presentation. So till now we've actually seen, you guys have actually been introduced to CSS, and now we'll have a very light introduction on JavaScript. So JavaScript is a scripting or a programming language that allows you to implement complex functionalities in your website. It's cross-platform, object-oriented, and a very important thing that you guys should actually know about is that JavaScript and Java are completely different languages, like both in design, implementation, and the way you code them. Yeah, you should not be mistaken into thinking that okay, Java and JavaScript are connected. Okay, maybe Java is version one, JavaScript is version two, because that's actually a mistake that I had when I was like when I started programming. I was like, okay, oh, Java and JavaScript are the same thing, but that's not the case. And the thing about JavaScript is that JavaScript programs can directly run on your browser because your browser has an interpreter already built in. And now, what is the importance of JavaScript? So, I think, as I read out, it actually allows you to perform complex functionalities. If you want to create certain animations or certain, what do we say, example for user to input something, we want to compute the question, figure out the answer, and return it back. For all these processes, you require JavaScript. It basically makes your whole website like dynamic, not dynamic. It makes it function. Yeah, makes it function. So some features of JavaScript. So as I said, it's a proper programming language. So it has all the arithmetic, assignment, logical, and comparison operators, just like any other programming language, like Python or C. It also has constructs. So it has if, else, while, for, switch case, etc. And it also has classes and objects since it's object oriented. And it also has exception handling and event handling. Now, what are events? I'll get to in the next slide. So the first thing that you actually start learning in a new programming language is variables. So there are three main types of variables in JavaScript. So we have the var variable, the let variable, and the const variable. So what are like how are they different? What are they? So a var variable can be redeclared, updated, and has a global scope. Okay, so the var variables basically do it all. If it just does everything, it's the most convenient way of declaring a variable. A let variable can be updated but not redeclared. So and it only has local scope. So let me give an example. If I were to write the command let x is equal to 10 and then a semicolon followed by let x is equal to 20, that would give me an error. But if I were to let x is equal to 10 semicolon x is equal to 20, if you notice I've not put another let there. So what I've done is I've actually updated the value that is allowed, but a redeclaration is not allowed. Now, a const variable cannot be updated, cannot be redeclared, but but all of these actually changes in certain exceptions. But maybe for 95% of the time, const cannot be redeclared and cannot be updated. Now, what are events? Actually, events allow you to write JavaScript code that react to certain situations. So an event is basically anything that happens on the web page. So you opening a website is an event. The website loading is an event. You moving a mouse is an event. You clicking a button, hovering over some text, all those are considered as events. So as you can see the examples, web page loading, form, fields, changing, etc. And to handle events, you have event handlers. So an event handler is basically a program which the programmer writes to handle a certain event. So if I were to click the submit button, or if I were to click a certain button, how what do I want to happen? So that's basically an event handler. You assign an event handler to that specific event. And some common event handlers in JS are on click, on mouse over, on submit. Now some basics in JS. So if you want to print certain things on the terminal, you'll use console.log instead of print, as you might have instead of using the print command if you were to use Python. So in JS, it's console.log, whatever text you want, text, variable, value, anything that you really want to do. And then JavaScript also has certain interactions that actually directly ask the user's input or inform the user of what's happening. An alert is an interaction which pops up on the screen, informing the end user of any message or something that the website wants to convey. A prompt is again, it just pops up on the screen, gives a certain message, but a prompt also allows the user to input something. So at the end of the process, the prompt actually returns a value. So example, if I get a prompt, enter your name, I can input, okay, Daniel Salana, and I actually get the value, and I get that value, and I can start putting it through different functions or whatever I really want. Confirm, on the other hand, is very similar. It gives you a message, but instead of it allowing the user to input anything, it just gives you two options. So is it okay or cancel? And that basically equates to true or false. So in today's session, we aren't actually going much into JS. We're actually going to try to focus on how you can use HTML to communicate with JS so as to change a CSS styling. So to do that, you require these codes that are given below. So document.getElement by ID, document.getElements by class name, and document.getElements by tag. So we'll mostly be focusing on these three today. And now there are two ways of actually adding JS to your HTML pages. So the first method is to actually write all your write all your JavaScript code within two script tags and place these script tags inside your header body. Now this is not the preferred way of doing it, but for beginners it is well and good. The second and the more professional way of doing it is the external file method. So here we use a JavaScript file called script.js or anything that ends with .js. We write our JavaScript code and then we connect it to our main HTML page or the HTML page in which we want the functionality to be implemented using the same script tag, but with a source attribute. Now, the thing about external files is that it's actually the most preferred and it's something that's expected from you, especially from an industrial point of view, because you have to separate your code because otherwise you'll just have a mess of everything. Imagine if you were to have a page where you have JavaScript, you have CSS, and you have HTML everywhere. It reduces the readability, and you can't even reuse most of the code. So segmenting your code in different files is actually very important, and it's very professional, both for open source projects as well as actually working with different people. So that's all for the session. Now we'll go on to the hands-on part. I'll just check if you guys have any questions so far. Yes, a var variable can be given an integer and can later be updated onto a string. So can a let, but you can't redeclare a let. So you can't say let x is equal to 10 and let x is equal to hackerspace. That won't work. But var will work. Okay. So I've actually created a simple HTML page right now, and I've already connected one CSS file along with the JavaScript file, and I've actually used that external method. So we have a link, the relation, and an href for the CSS, and a script with a source attribute. Now, one pro tip actually is that if you guys are using VS Code, you should really think about getting this extension called Line Server, sorry, Live Server. So what Live Server actually does is that it continuously it continuously refreshes your code as soon as you start making changes onto it. So, example, I go to write the welcome to space. If I go back, it's directly updated. So what we might normally be doing is that okay, you write certain code on your HTML on your HTML, and then you'll actually open the HTML page on a website on a web browser, and you reload every time you do a change. So this is actually much faster and much more convenient. So let's begin with certain styling. So I'll just directly go to the body first. So I have a selector, I have a body, have an opening and a closing curly brace. And I'll give one of the first properties. So background, the background color. And I include the value as orange. I think another useful thing about VS Code is that it actually gives you recommendation. So it actually helps you to code faster. And to go back to the original page, you can see that yeah, the color has changed. Now, now let's get into classes and IDs. So if you can see, all these texts are pretty similar. They're just divided by different tags. So how can I give them the same functionality or the same styling? I can do this by actually giving them a class, a common class. So I can say class text, copy it and give it to all of them as well. Now all of these have the text class connected to them. And when I want to write a rule for a class, I just have to write dot dot text, and then I can start giving it certain properties and values. So it has an orange background, right? So give it let's give the font a certain color. Let's say white, and let's increase the font size as well. So maybe 10 pixels, and we can also maybe make the font weight a bit. Generally, you won't really see the difference at 500. If you were to go at 600, you'll actually see that okay, it's become a bit thicker. Okay, I think 10 pixels is a bit too small, so let's make that 20. Yeah, you can at least see it now. And now I've actually already declared an ID here. So in this situation, there's only one header. So here it makes sense to actually use only one ID. So what I'll do is, so to write a CSS rule for an ID, I have to start with a hash, followed by the ID name, which is header. And then I can give the color as white. And let's give with a big font size, a heading font size for 30 pixels. Now let's increase the font size a bit more, maybe 40, and let's bring the text to the center. So align text align, text align center. So yeah, so this is some of the changes that we were able to implement. Now we actually finished off with the classes and IDs. So next we'll actually look into the box model. So let me just create a div, and inside this div, let's use an image. Logo.image. Now, so if you look at this div is the parent and this is the child. So okay, wait, I'll actually do the styling first. So let this class be container. Okay, this is a container, and I'll give the image a class of logo. Now, for the container, I'll give it a background image. Sorry, a background color of maybe purple. And yeah, okay, I'll give it a background color purple. Let's see how it looks. Okay, the image is too large. Let's make it a bit smaller. Put a logo height, maybe 70 pixels. So if you think about it, just think about a situation now. You have a parent which actually has a certain styling, so you have a background color. But if you look here, the background and the background is almost it's exactly touching the borders of your image, and you don't really want that. So how do you fix that? You fix that with padding. So inside the image, I'll give a padding of let's say 20 pixels. So what the padding property does is that it actually gives a padding all around this element. So if you really want to check it out, you can actually go to the developer tools, and you can do this by pressing Control Shift plus J. And once you actually go onto your developer tools, you can use the selector and see image. So image is the element, dot logo is the class name, and it has a padding of 20 pixels. And actually, one of the most widely used properties in the box model is padding. So everywhere you keep on using padding here and there because you might have images, but without proper placements, the images can actually look worse than the one there. Let's make it 10 for now. And maybe let's add more images for now. Let's see. So 4 should be enough. I'll decrease the size to maybe 50 pixels. Okay, so you have them all in one line. Now we'll actually go to some examples on the Flexbox. So we have a container. Now let's make this container into Flex container. So we can actually do this by giving the display property, and instead of the value being inline, we'll just say flex. So now this box is a bit more flex box. The second thing you need to do is you need to justify how the elements are to be aligned. So should they be aligned in a row, column, or so that is given by flex direction. So now I just say row, and you can see all the images have been now they're in a row. But if I were to remove the padding, you see that all the images are just stuck together. This is another important application of padding. You actually want some space between the images. Oh, and one more thing that I forgot to mention was that you can have specific paddings. So I want padding on the right of the image mode to be on the left. So let's say, let's do this. Let padding be there. Padding, padding left should be 40 pixels. And there's nothing else, no other padding. So on the left side, I have 40 pixels of padding. And this can be repeated. So you can do this for padding left, padding right, top, bottom, etc. Back to the normal image now. So padding 10. And as you see right now, the flex direction is a row. So what happens if I make it a column? So yeah, it becomes a column, and then all of them have proper padding. Now this isn't actually the isn't it's technically correct because that's the rules you're given. You want everything to be in the column. But now let's bring it back to the row. Okay. And now if there's also another value. As you can see, we have row reverse. So what is row reverse? It actually reverses the elements it reverses the order of the elements to actually make it more clear. I just comment out these images and replace it with some other elements. And do the class also. So text should hopefully make it easier to see and clearer to understand. Okay. Text direction should be a row. So if you can see here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this order. Now, if I were to do row reverse, it is now 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's basically what it does. It just reverses the entire arrangement of the elements inside the parent. Now I just bring it back to row. And another easy thing about VS Code is that it's very easy to comment. So to comment anything in different languages. So all I have to do is maybe select something and just press Control plus this symbol, and it basically works out. Yeah, just bring it back to normal. Okay, so till now I've actually given you certain examples on the box model and also Flexbox, but there are multiple other things, and it would actually help you more if you were to actually search online and actually figure out how to do all these. I would just like to tell you one important thing, especially when it comes to styling, is that Google is your best friend, and well, like whatever you don't know, just Google it. You will find the answer either in Stack Overflow, either in W3 schools. And yeah, one more thing is that W3 schools is almost the best, and I know it is the best actually. It's the best place to search for any stylings or anything related to web development. So if you have any doubts in how to go about creating a design or creating a style, you can check W3 schools. I think now I'll just directly go into some examples of JavaScript. So instead of directly going onto the code, what I'll do is I'll open up the developer tools and let's start working on the console. Okay, that's already there. So I can directly start writing JS commands here, and it should give me the output. So console.log, say hello world. So yeah, so that's one thing. Now let's start with some of the JS interactions that we talked about. The first thing is an alert. So let's alert. So what happens? You actually get a pop-up saying, okay, you are, okay, leave the spelling. You're attending a session, and that's the other thing. The next one is a prompt. Okay, something. That's what I was saying. You have a message, and you also have the ability to input something. So then it returns that value. So a prompt is actually very useful when you want to actually get user inputs. And then the last interaction is actually the confirm. Sure. So I can press OK or cancel. So OK gives me a value true, and cancel gives me a value false. So you can start using these. You can start using these interactions for some logical arguments. So you might have an if statement, and this depends on how you really want to implement it in your websites. Now, regarding using JavaScript to actually perform certain CSS changes. So let's get to that now. So I'll go on to the script.js file, and let's start writing a function. So to write a function, you should first start the function keyword followed by a function name. So say work, and now I want to select a certain element in my HTML. So I can do that using the document object model, the DOM. Now we won't be really going much into the DOM in this session. That'll mostly be happening in our advanced Java session, which will be happening, I believe, on the 26th. So as of right now, all you need to know is that if you want to access the HTML page, you just have to use the word document and the document dot get element by ID. And then you give a specific, I mean, you can give a specific ID. So I'll give header text document or get element by ID header. And what I want to do is I want to change its style. So in styles, what do I really want to change? Let's change its color, and let's give it a green color. Now declare the function. I've selected an HTML element with JS. I've said it okay. Once it's selected, once this function is called, change this element's color to green. Now, if I were to go to my submit button, so here is the input type submit. I will just give a one click, and then I would call that function that I just declared there. Now let's go to the website and see what happens. As you can see, using JavaScript, we were able to change the CSS styling. So this might seem very simple. This example is actually very simple, but using the same set of steps, you can actually start creating very, very complex processing, very complex functions as well. Now, something that's a bit tricky in the beginning is documents that get elements by class name. See, that's the thing. So get elements, not get element. That's because classes can be declared for multiple HTML elements. So get elements by class name. And it's not header because we don't have a header class. Let's say, text. We have a text. Document get elements by class name text. The same thing, style.color, change it to green. And if I were to actually click on it, you see that it doesn't work. So now the problem is that we really haven't specified which HTML we're actually selecting. It knows, okay, it's class, but there are four elements that have the class name that have the class name text. So how do we actually specify that? So we can do that by actually giving it the zeroth position. We give it a proper position with zero indexing. So I think you guys are familiar with arrays, right? So the first position starts at index 0. So when I say 0 here, It's actually referring to this stack, the first one here. So year one refers to the second one. So let's say, let's start with zero. Let's see what happens. This changes to green. Um, that page will automatically reload. Let's say it goes to the second tag, second or the third tag actually. So text three should become green. So that's something about class name. And now it's actually almost very similar to documents to get element by tag name. So okay, let's give tag name SP. The same situation again. It knows let's remove the indexing. So it knows that you've actually selected a p tag element, but it doesn't know which specific element. So to solve that issue, again we use indexing. So I just keep zero, and yeah, as you can see, we actually got the output. And that's pretty much all that I actually planned to discuss for today's JavaScript, for at least JavaScript part of this session. And I guess let's just take a look into the, the cheat sheet again. So, example, if I really want to change something, I kind of want to show you guys the methodology of actually how do I go about implementing a design. So, okay, I have text. Okay, I want to do something with the text. Okay, I'll go to the text area. Um, I want to. Okay, yeah. There's something as text decoration. So let me just give a link somewhere. And it will match. So you might really want to you want to remove this styling. So what you can do is actually give a class name. So let's do so class equal to text. But you still see that it still has that line. Now why is that? It's because the A tag already has a built-in styling in it, so it always has a line for any link. How do you remove that? So now that's a specific problem. How do you remove this thing? So if you were to search for it online, they'll tell you, okay, this is what you have to do. But if you think about it, it's like a decoration. So if I go onto my cheat sheet, I see, okay, it's a text decoration. Okay, what is this? It has, oh, this is the underline. I kind of want to remove that. That's an overline. So what if I want to remove the underline? What I can do is I can do text decoration none. So let me try that. I'll go to the text and give text decoration none. And as you can see, the lost line. So so that's how you should normally try doing it. So if you can't really identify what you really want to change or what you're actually looking for, look through the cheat sheet, figure out, okay, this is the property, then search it on Google. And I'm pretty sure that you'll find you almost 100%, 90% of the time you'll always find what you're looking for, because a lot of other people who are also trying to do the same things as you are. And so that pretty much brings us to the end of today's session. I know today's session was a bit short, but it wasn't. Today's session was more of an introductory, just allow you to step your feet into CSS and JS and to actually figure out what these things actually mean. Because many beginners, even actually me, when I was in the first year, I thought, okay, I want to create a website, but after the HTML, I've learned CSS, I've learned JS, I've learned three programming languages. Learning C++, and Python itself was so much. I learned three more just to create a web page. It's not actually true. It's just that HTML, CSS, and JS are pretty small, and they're actually not as difficult as they might seem. So that's the whole point of the introductory sessions that we have right now. And today, and the amount that we've actually looked into JS is quite less, to be frank. But that's fine because we actually have a second session coming mostly on the 26th. sorry, third session on 26th, which actually dives deeper into advanced JS, and we also might go into jQuery and some other advanced topics to actually provide greater functionality to your website. So feel free to contact us and I'll be here. Yeah, I'll be answering some questions here. Can we define ID and then use get elements by ID? Yes, that's what we basically we define ID. Not get elements. You can only get element by ID, and you should be very careful of the capital because E should be capital, B should be capital, I should be capital. So you should be very careful of that. Can you tell the extension name again, which updates web pages regularly? Okay, so it is a live server. Okay, SERV live server. That's the name of the extension. Could you suggest any resources that you use to learn CSS.js? So the thing about CSS is that, yeah, of course, you should directly definitely go through some YouTube videos, and there they'll teach like example how to create a navigation bar. So they'll teach you step by step. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to use the flex box in this manner. Keep the logo in one direction. Keep everything else in the other direction. And so from there you're able to start picking up. And then once you get their code, you start understanding that code. So okay, this is what these guys have done. That's why these guys have actually done this and all that. And other than that, just generally search online. So you have W3 schools, you have lots of other resources, and yeah, and if you're also thinking about why to study web development, a very interesting thing is that we actually have a web development course in the CS department in the third semester. So if you start learning web development now, it can actually help you in your third semester. So that's just one point. Okay, a link for the cheat box or cheat sheet, I believe. Okay, the cheat sheet that will be given. So we'll be sending the PPT on the Discord group, and the link to cheat sheet is on the PPT. So you will get it. Don't worry. Are there any other questions? Yeah, thank you. So I'll be here for another 5 minutes. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me. Or otherwise, that's pretty much it. Thank you for attending.